Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today because we are diving into an epic disaster survival story straight out of an ancient text. We're going to break down a sequence of events that honestly reads like a blockbuster Hollywood movie, even though it's centuries old. It's a gripping story of survival, sudden chaos, and that jarring realization of just how small we really are when the environment turns against us. So let's jump right in and unpack exactly what happened on this fateful journey.
So what actually happens when legendary warriors face an enemy they literally can't fight with swords or arrows? Our subjects today are some of the most powerful, capable, and heavily armed heroes imaginable. We're talking about a group of high-souled warriors traveling with Panchali and some of the greatest Brahmanas on a major expedition. But what makes this narrative so incredibly compelling is that we get a front-row seat to their ultimate vulnerability. They are about to face the raw, unbridled, and totally indifferent power of nature. And against nature? Well, all the martial skill in the world doesn't mean a thing.
Part 1. Entering the Sacred Nodin.
Okay, to really grasp the scale of what's about to happen, we first have to understand the setting. Our heroes, the Pandavas, are entering a region called Gandhamadana. This is a rugged, deeply sacred mountain area. The text tells us it's a place filled with beautiful lakes, rivers, mountains, and forests. And it's heavily populated, but definitely not by ordinary people. It's inhabited by sages, siddhas, kinnaras, apsaras, and celestials. It's a mystical, majestic landscape, but as they note, it's also incredibly craggy and difficult to pass through.
And get this, look at how heavily prepared these warriors are for a fight. They are foremost bowmen of immeasurable prowess, walking around with their bows stringed at full stretch, meaning they are ready to fire at a split second's notice. They've got their quivers, their arrows, drawn swords, and they're even wearing these specialized finger caps made of iguana skin to protect their hands while shooting. They're hyper-vigilant, armed to the absolute teeth, and totally ready for a physical ambush. Which is kind of hilarious in hindsight because all of that gear is completely useless against what's coming. I mean, you can't exactly stab a weather system, right? Keep this intense, aggressive preparation in mind because it's going to make their impending helplessness so much more striking. But despite all those drawn swords and stretched bows, their initial reality is actually surprisingly peaceful. The source text describes them restraining their senses, subsisting simply on fruits and roots. They're just casually walking through these wide-spreading shades on the mountain summits, beholding all kinds of various beasts and passing through spots overflowing with trees that bear flowers and fruit in all seasons. It's an almost idyllic, serene journey through a profoundly beautiful ecosystem. Part 2. The blinding storm strikes.
Talk about pure whiplash. One moment, it's this tranquil landscape frequented by celestials, just blooming with flowers and fruit. And the next, total sudden chaos. Right as these mighty heroes are entering the mountain Gandhamadana, a violent wind suddenly erupts, bringing a heavy, blinding shower with it. The transformation is just instantaneous. That beautiful celestial landscape abruptly turns into a deadly trap. And the escalation here is brutally fast. Literally within seconds, this sudden, violent wind hits. Within minutes, mighty clouds of dust and massive amounts of dry leaves block out the sky entirely, covering the earth, the air, and the firmament. Then comes the absolute most terrifying part, complete sensory deprivation. The heavens are so thick with dust that nothing can be seen. It gets so incredibly loud and chaotic that the Pandavas can't even hear each other speak over the roar. Their eyes are just enveloped in darkness. And worse, the wind is so powerful it starts hurling flying particles of rocks right at them. They are completely blinded and battered by the earth itself.
Part 3. Heroes seek shelter.
Just imagine the intense sensory overload they're going through right now. They are completely surrounded by darkness and flying rocks. And then they start hearing these mighty sounds coming from the trees. Now, these aren't just rustling branches. The text specifically points out the incessant, mighty sounds of massive trees physically breaking down under the sheer, brutal force of the wind, violently crashing to the ground all around them. The very forest that was just providing them beautiful shade is now literally crashing down on their heads.
The psychological toll here is just immense. Right in the thick of this destructive chaos, totally distracted and battered by these wild gusts of wind, the heroes actually wonder out loud, are the heavens falling down or the earth and the mountains being rent? Think about that for a second. Think about the sheer panic and existential dread it takes to make legendary warriors genuinely question if the sky itself is collapsing or if the mountains are tearing apart. That is true, unadulterated terror.
Completely terrified of the wind, they are totally pinned down, reduced to literally feeling around blindly with their hands just to find some kind of cover. They're scrambling into anthills and caverns. The mighty Bhima, who is still stubbornly holding his bow by the way, is forced to huddle under a wayside tree just to support Krishna. Yudhishthira the Just, along with Dhaumya, creeps blindly into the deep woods. Sahadeva wedges himself into a rock, desperately trying to keep the sacred fire alive. And the rest, like Nakula, Lomasa, and the other great Brahmanas, well, they simply stand frozen in fright under the trees, just hoping to outlast the onslaught. It's a total, chaotic scramble for survival.
Part 4. The torrential aftermath.
Then, the dynamic of the storm completely transforms in 3 brutal steps. Step 1. The furious wind finally abates and that choking dust subsides. But don't celebrate yet, there is no reprieve. Step 2. A torrential shower pours down without intermission. Pushed by a newly swift wind, this rain pours down relentlessly, filling up all sides around them. And step 3, the audiovisual terror continues as loud, rattling noise sounding like thunder being hurled erupts everywhere, accompanied by quick flashing lightning playing across the clouds.
Because, all that water has to go somewhere, right? The text paints a terrifying picture of the resulting catastrophic flood. All around them, these temporary rivers begin to flow. But these aren't the beautiful, serene rivers from earlier. No, these waters are covered with foam and completely turbid with thick mud. Bearing massive volumes of water, they spread over frothy rafts and rush down the mountainside with a tremendous, deafening roar. The force of this muddy deluge is so intense that it's actively uprooting trees in its wake, just continuing the massive destruction the wind had already started. And then, it finally ends. The tremendous roar of the flood and the rattling of the thunder just cease. The air finally clears. Honestly, you can almost feel the collective exhale through the text. The heroes cautiously peek out from the rocks in the woods. Battered, completely humbled, and probably covered head to toe in mud, these once pristine, invincible warriors brush themselves off. Having survived the outright wrath of the mountain, they meet back together and firmly start once again for Gandhamadana. Their epic journey forever marked by this terrifying reality check.
So what does this all mean for us? Which brings us to our final takeaway for this explainer. If nature can so thoroughly humble legendary, fully armed heroes, how do we face our own storms? This ancient text is such a brilliant, vivid reminder that no matter amount of drawn swords, stretched bows, or physical prowess can stop a rushing river or a blinding dust storm. It's a powerful lesson in human vulnerability and the awesome, truly unstoppable power of the natural world. Thank you so much for joining me to unpack this incredible source material today. Stay curious, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.